No massive, you got cool banks alongside Big D and the kids table. You know, as we do things different to go. Vibes got for flow, you know what I mean? Run this.
They tell us that we don't understand, we do. They tell us that we're all lazy, we ain't. They tell us that we're going to hell, we aren't. They tell us that the power is might, it ain't. They tell us who to hate, we won't. They tell me that I'm violent, and I ain't. They tell you that you missed your mark, you didn't. They tell us we have equal chance, and we don't. Well, maybe we should all bring them in close, calm them all down till they feel soothed. Show them we can all change water into wine once we understand the best purpose for life. Be realistic with your reflection. Maybe some of us should let go of billions. Easy for us to help the lost children. Keep our minds centered on our education. Go take a journalist job, then lie. Become a policeman, then just lie. Get elected leader and then lie. Say you're a man of faith, then lie. Just speak the truth is all we cry. Protect the innocent is all we cry. Don't lead corrupt is all we cry. Don't use your faith for gain, we cry. Last night when I spoke with God, said my followers are lost, that my preachers are just frauds. I don't know where I went wrong, tried to make them all strong. Would you put this in a song? So I went and wrote the words right down. The men in the band thought the topic fairgrounds. Then the label went and let it on through. Maybe a scandal with money would accrue. Then a preacher said you can't speak for God. It makes you a liar and it makes you a fraud. Then what is the gospel and the Bible? Maybe God was just being a bit artful. Last night when I spoke with God, he said I don't know where I went wrong. Went wrong. Cause you do. I tell you that you're doing just right, cause you are. I tell you that your life will be fine, cause it will. I tell you that you are love, cause you are. I tell you that you'll hit your mark, cause you will. I tell you that you're beautiful, cause you are. I tell you that you're talented, sure are. I tell you that you're perfect the way you are.
Come to offer is inside. Don't let the fears no become a your fright. Stand up firm and prepare now for the fight. Don't make them push you around when you're right. You're perfect just the way you are. Yes, you're on the right path cause you are. Yes, you're doing great things cause you are. Yes, you're perfect the way you are.
Last night when I spoke with God, said my followers are lost, half my preachers are just frauds. And I don't know where I went wrong, I tried to make them all strong. Would you put it in a song? Last night when I spoke with God, said my followers are lost, half my preachers are just frauds. And I don't know where I went wrong, tried to make them all strong. Would you put it in a
Hello, hello, hello. You are listening to Free Thinker Radio on 90.1 KPFT. I'm sitting here with my good buddies, Micah and Derrick, and we are happy to be here as always. I wanted to share with you guys an uplifting song today, one that shows that everyone has value inside, so hopefully that brightened up your Friday. We're recording this on a Tuesday at 9 o'clock, but we're happy that KPFT lets us record these shows and gives us a chance to talk. Yeah,
Big D and the kids
table and put it in a song.
I had to write that down. I'd never heard it before. I appreciate you bringing it because I'm going to be listening to that at work tomorrow.
Absolutely, man. Yeah, good to be back for another week. This is our, I don't know what week it is now at this point, 6th week, maybe recording on quarantine, separated from each other, recording via Zoom. But like Johnny said, we're thankful to be here on 90.1 KPFT Houston. And, before we dive into everything, we got so much to cover as we always do. We were talking before the show, we're going to start trying to do some new things as we always are evolving on Freethinker Radio after doing this for just about a decade now, Micah, in the last couple of years with Johnny with us. And we're going to start doing a 2-hour live show, which is what we had been doing prior to the pandemic and everything. We've been doing a 2-hour live show on Mondays and a 1-hour live show like the one you're hearing now on Fridays on the FM side from 3 to 4 p.m. We're going to start next week, start recording a 2-hour live show. You'll still hear your 1 hour here on KPFT Friday, 3 to 4 p.m., but there'll be a second hour that you can tune in if you want to do so via the web on YouTube at The Conscious Resistance, and of course on Facebook at Freethinker Radio. We'll be streaming live so you can see us in person and you can get a whole extra hour of Freethinker Radio that'll be a little more in depth in some ways than what we can cover in 1 hour on the FM dial. So I'm excited about that, guys. And other than that, I guess we should dive in. There's so much Houston stuff happening. Micah, what do you got? What are we going to get into first? I know we got a few.
Well, there's been some things that are there's some items that amid COVID have been discussed. The parks were closed, all this new authoritarianism in our life, and our own personal precautions. But it turns out that some people have been rebellious and defying orders, and actually opening their businesses and trying to earn money amongst it. And right here in Houston, we've had such miscreants. The Federal American Grill and Memorial reopens for dining service Friday against Hidalgo's order. And that's right there from the Chronicle. We get into that a little bit. And one of the things I thought was interesting is this gentleman, he had basically just gone into business a little bit before Corona hit and before the order. And, the order did say $1,000 fine and up to half a year in jail for defying this judge, Lena Hidalgo, who I believe isn't even an attorney, by the way. It closed a lot of businesses and obviously hurt a lot of people. And the guy complied up to a point, and then he says he didn't like the government picking and choosing which businesses win and lose, and basically got out there and did something. And, you're seeing little examples of this across the country, and it's nice that Houston's not being left out. Another one was in the news a bit. What is the name of this place? Onyx. It's a strip club, and it basically went all the way to the federal court to reopen under governor's order because earlier the police shut it down in 15 minutes of opening because they wanted to, I guess, but they served food and they had a license, a nightclub license, and they weren't just using that. They were using a food license and operating at 25% capacity. And a number of things that were interesting is that a lot of the businesses that are opening at reduced capacity are barely able to function, and a few employees can make some money, but it's I think the economic impacts of this are great. And when you see people doing this and taking this sort of risk just to, it means they're being pushed pretty far. And probably every time one person does it, there's a bunch of other people who want to. So, I thank goodness for these people. I was joking earlier and called one of them miscreant because that's what it seems like the mainstream wants you to think. But these are in a way heroes because, they're taking a risk. They're getting out there, and the people going to these businesses are taking a risk, and they're going about life, and we'll see what happens. So, I don't know what else to say about that.
Well, Micah, I want to add to that, because I know this ties into the kind of the overall bigger story, which is, as you said, Judge Lena Hidalgo. And last week we were talking about her with the mask order and the state stepping in and saying you couldn't fine people for not wearing a mask. And we were also talking about the hospital that was in NRG Stadium that was going empty after basically being wasted by taxpayer dollars. And here we are talking about the various businesses that are choosing to stay open. And I just want to offer another perspective to the conversation. So for those who've been listening recent weeks, I'm in Mexico. And one of the things that's really interesting in Mexico is now there have been similar orders that are happening in different states around Mexico. In Michoacan, which is a state nearby where I'm at, they are saying that only essential businesses, it's basically where Houston was 3 weeks ago, in some ways. They're starting to say only essential businesses open. Some places are requiring masks. And you see the cops kind of drive around in parades making announcements. But for the most part, people are choosing to stay open. The people who survive by opening up the bottom floor of their house and opening up a taco stand, they have to do it. So they do it every night. The guy who survives by selling his fruit on the corner does that every night, every day. He's open till 10 p.m. Doing that. So people who have to survive here in Mexico, and I think in the U.S., are going to do what they need to do in order to survive. And if that means violating some order or even a law, dare I say, breaking the law, that's what people are going to do. So I just think it's showing that people are going to do what they think is necessary to survive. And I just wanted to make that point, as we're talking about what's happening in Houston, and really this is happening all over the country. So I think it's important to see that people will do what is necessary to continue to survive. And I mentioned the judge, Lina Hidalgo. This is coming from.
I was going to say they've given people a choice to respond to that via a government form that tells people that essentially will tell on businesses who are allowing people in their stores and their restaurants.
Yeah, it's kind of like the story we were just covering where Micah was talking about strip clubs having to go to court to win the right to stay open, and some businesses choosing to stay open or to open up more capacity than they're technically, I guess, ordered to. And in this case, Johnny, like what you're commenting on here, we have it on for those who are watching on screen. It's Reopen Texas Phase 1 violations, and there's a government website where you can report on. First, they tell you which businesses that must be closed, and then you can report a business if they're operating at more than 25% occupancy. What else? They're not selling food if you're at a bar and you're operating, being a tattoo shop, bowling alleys, arcades. So this is essentially, I don't really think there's many other ways to put it other than some sort of snitch form. And maybe that might offend some people who are listening here on KPFT, but what do you guys think about it?
I think that it's kind of weird. Scroll up just a little bit because the type of businesses here and the list of businesses, if you could just move down a little bit, think about it. You could go to Home Depot, you go to Walmart where there's all kinds of people. You go to Fiesta, you go stand outside in the parking lot. But if you happen to go to a lounge or a game room or a fitness center or any of these things, I want to understand how COVID, like maybe in a spa or a swimming pool, but it's like grown adults know this thing is out there. They're treating everybody like children. There's something out there. You can't get in the pool. Cooties are going around. But how is it worse to go to an arcade than go to Home Depot? How are there more people? You see what I'm saying? How are you going to be exposed more? So I've got those type of questions in the face of just, let's say we're going to accept some sort of authoritarianism over this.
Yeah, well, I know some folks will hear that and think that we maybe have got this once or twice, that we're taking the situation too lightly or that we're not being serious enough about it. But I don't think it's that. I think that the things that you're drawing attention to and what this episode is sort of going to focus on, whether we're talking about the economic, the food system, we're going to get into all that in the second half of the show, police violence that we're about to talk about, or just orders from government that are asking people to essentially start to turn on each other and to spy on your neighbor. And we talked about this years ago when it was, if you see something, say something. And, these sort of things can be really problematic. And we're going to talk about censorship as well and how all of this is tied in. This is all a reaction to COVID-19. And it's a really dangerous reaction.
Like in a sense, like what do most ordinary citizens, what would they know about, what they're doing at their business in the first place? For all you know, they could be cleaning their building or doing other kinds of work, and you're sending people, just calling in. Or there could be also false claims of people who just don't like each other and want to
mind control, man.
Yeah,
mind control.
I'm saying like it just doesn't make sense to follow up on that many things. Plus there was orders of a lot of people that were sending in fake complaints in protest of this.
That's an interesting idea. I wonder about the idea of that a bit. What do you think about this? You hear of things like that along with the idea of throwing yourself on the levers of the machine type thing. Like when they what was it we used to use in the day, Derrick? Phone jam them, info jam.
Info jam.
Well, how does someone know if a business is at 25%?
Well, I think in general, it's the whole thing is just getting people to start being overly cautious and overly aware of what other people are doing. You know what I mean? Instead of just kind of going about their day.
Why not just talk to somebody?
Yeah, I mean, like try to communicate instead of just going and filling out a government form and turning in your neighbor. Unfortunately, as we prepare to kind of move along here and touch on a couple more Houston stories, unfortunately, man, if you guys have been on any social media, and I've had friends send me screenshots of some of their friends on Facebook or private neighborhood groups, there's a lot of people out there, even maybe some people hearing this might feel like, hey, people should be arrested when those things happen. There are people in different neighborhood groups on nextdoor.com and on Facebook and other organizing places and, saying, hey, my neighbor's outside and they're gathering with more than 5 people. What should I do? Should I call the cops? Or just this kind of mentality is becoming somewhat prevalent right now. And I don't know if you guys have seen it, but it's something that I've seen more recently. And again, it definitely has me worried as far as if that becomes normalized and where we go after that. But I guess we'll continue on and just keep asking those questions because it's I don't know, it's weird to see where we're going. But Micah, I know we had some updates on Gerald Goins, who followed his story for over a year now?
Yeah, we've been following the Officer Goins, because due to the tunnel raid, primarily at the very first stages of it. But it's just unfolded, and so many cases have been investigated. And a recent one, news article to break here in Houston was how he basically entrapped or talked a homeless woman into buying him $5 or $10 worth of crack cocaine, and he gave her $5 to go get a beer and had his cop buddies arrest her. So she had a history of mental illness, and I know a lot of people will say, well, that's what they get. But think about it. Here's a homeless person, and a person comes up and asks them to help them acquire something. Is anybody being hurt? Some people may say the crack cocaine got to them through some sort of terrorism or something, but the person is just going and buying something, no matter what you might think about it, and trying to do a favor to someone who came up to him. This poor person that had a history of mental illness is basically being, in my view, kind of exploited here. I mean, a lot of people will balk hearing that, I know, but at the same time, this is Rachel Scott, and let her name be known, that they basically, I don't know. It's a bit much. And she gave Goins a rock of 0.2 grams of the drug, and then asked Goins, could he buy her a beer? He gave her $5 and dropped her off at the corner store, had his cop buddies arrest her. So yeah, she was basically, she received 2-year deferred adjudication, etc. So I thought that was pretty, the conviction was overturned. They can't really go back and, unarrest her and not put her through that, but the conviction was overturned.
You see this quote, Micah, from Josh Reese, the chief at the district attorney's office, division chief. He says, quote, "We anticipate that there will be numerous similar cases and resolutions in the months ahead." So they're obviously seeing a pattern of his, and they're suspecting there's going to be more of this.
And you think he's a lone wolf, a rogue cop. And by the very phrase rogue, they want you to think most of them aren't like this. And wasn't there some radical stories over the last couple of weeks of people being killed, but by officers that are questionable? I'm not saying that they necessarily did something, but this is a huge machine, the Houston Police Department. And there's lots of things going on. So there's room for people like Goins to exploit the system. And I think that, if there's anything, the law needs to be free of this sort of stuff. Okay. So it's good that it's coming out. It's good that they're working on it. I really doubt that he was alone. And if you're in another city, I think this is an example of what may be going on in cities near you. So, yeah. This one was pretty interesting. I see you bringing it up on the screen. It's just another example. And I think there's a lot of good officers out there trying to, prevent violent crimes and protect people. And, I definitely praise them for their efforts in defending the weak and not doing anything, to hurt people. But here's an individual that was actually hurt. In it, just like these people we've talked about with Goins, beyond just the Tuttles. This individual, James Harris, and you got to respect the man. He's always maintained his innocence. I'm starting to notice that pattern on some of these people, and I'm wondering about it. In the face of what's going on, they maintain their innocence. He wasn't one of the men the police saw fleeing a drug house in Northeast Houston back in 2009. So they basically, I'm going to wrap this up. I know we only got so long, but it turns out they went and they got one of the women's boyfriends, and they said they were going to pin all the drugs on her unless they found out who did it. And so that's when they began to identify this James Harris. And, they found a car at the house that was registered to his sister. After he found out that they had a warrant for his arrest, he called them. That's kind of interesting. Usually guilty people don't just call the police. And he protested, saying he was innocent. And he told them from the jump, if you can find anything in the house that ties me, I won't argue with you anymore. And so it just kind of went on. They plea bargained, offered him all kinds of plea bargains. One, they tried to offer him just 2 years. They offered him 4 separate plea bargains, and he refused all of them. It turns out after conviction, Harris appealed, but it was denied. He filed a writ and seeking overturn. It still failed. Finally, he asked for DNA testing, and we've seen some problems with this in the past, Derrick. This DNA was granted, and the DA's office began reviewing the case. The testing showed that his DNA was not on any of the evidence. And it goes on further. But one of the things I wanted to bring up in these stories is the fact that at the end of the line, they're going to pass the buck on to you, just like they are with the economic nightmare that's worse than QE 1, 2, and 3. At the end of the day, it's the people that are going to pay. They pay for the bullets, they pay for the time of the officers, and they pay for the lawsuits and the judges and the whole apparatus and machinery when it goes awry. At the end, it's the people who bleed, and this is another example about it. We could get in deeper, but it's kind of what we get when we have such a huge, onerous machine with few checks and balances.
Absolutely, Micah. I'm going to cover one more story before we go to our music break. Of course, you're listening to Freethinker Radio on 90.1 KPFT Houston. We're here every Friday from 3 to 4 p.m. And we are going to be live, and we put the videos on YouTube at The Conscious Resistance, and of course, Facebook at Freethinker Radio. So check that out. Before we go to our music break, though, I want to tell you about another story involving police. And of course, it connects to our overall topic of the year, COVID-19. This one is another story examining some of the reactions that we're seeing from the results of COVID. And in this case, this is the call for social distancing, right? And some of these orders that we covered here in Houston about shutting down businesses or wearing masks and these kinds of things, and how the police handle this. We covered this a couple of weeks ago, Micah, all the different stories from India and elsewhere showing police getting more and more violent around the world and more and more abusive to people who are just not following their commands related to COVID-19. So this one, I'll just briefly summarize it. A New York City police officer was recently caught on Saturday on a video that somebody was standing by videotaped, showing him pointing a stun gun at a man and then violently throwing him to the ground and punching him and basically just beating him up over allegedly violating social distancing, requirements. And the officer has actually been stripped of his gun and badge and placed on desk duty pending an internal investigation. I'm not holding my breath for that, but a bystander videotaped that. This is probably one of the worst parts of it. He was a plainclothes officer, so he's not wearing a face mask. He's plainclothes. He slaps a 33-year-old Donnie Wright in the face, punches him in the shoulder, and drags him to the sidewalk after leveling him in a crosswalk in Manhattan's East Village. The mayor said, "The behavior I saw in that video is simply not acceptable." And, they claim they're looking into it. His arrest, and there was apparently 2 other arrests on the same block only minutes earlier from different cops, basically trying to arrest people for not following requirements. Another one was 20-year-old Fitzroy Gale, who was seen on a video pleading for help as several officers wrestled him into submission on a Brooklyn sidewalk in early March. Then we have another one, Carolyn, excuse me, I'm trying to look for the other names. But this article is basically just going through a number of examples. Francisco Garcia, that's the name of the plainclothes officer. He was also helping take one of these people to the ground before turning his attention to the other man who moved there. And so it like went from one incident of tackling one person to going and grabbing another person for getting too close. The officer apparently said, "What are you flexing for? Don't flex," before he grabbed the guy and wrestled him to the ground, slapped him and punched him, then grabbed him by the arm and dragged him across the crosswalk and punched him again in the stomach. And so I'm not saying obviously all cops are doing this. That's not the point of this story at all, but it is just an example of what's going on. And our overall, I guess, theme here, and has been since this whole thing has started, is that we need to be careful, how we let the blowback to COVID-19 and the response, the reaction to COVID-19, how far that goes. If they can force you to wear a mask to go anywhere, how many steps away is that from forcing you to carry an immunity passport or to take a mandatory medicine, whatever that may be, in order to work or to travel or to exist? And I think we need to be careful that it is a very dangerous, slippery slope. And we were talking about some of this before the show, guys. I guess we'll get into this after the break, but this medical tyranny, as some people are just calling it, and I think medical martial law in some ways, it could easily go in that direction. But we'll explore more of that after the break. We got to get some music. Micah, who was this song you wanted to play? What was the second song you wanted to get to?
This is Red Tape by Jkininki. We can say their name. And actually, there's a lyric video by them, so you guys can hear why I keep pushing it, because it's good music and I enjoy it. And hey, one thing I wanted to say is I think as far as they can push it is as far as it's somehow related mathematically to the people's fear.
How afraid can you get the people, and how far will the people let them take it? Well, we'll be right back. This is Free Thinker Radio, 90.1 KPFT. Stay tuned to Jkininki.
From the
That was Jkininki's Red Tape. I know they're having more work coming in soon. I always enjoy hearing their music. That song really hits me. I like that line, "We only die for dirt." I think the way things carry on, and they're talking so much about things going on with war and stuff there in different ways. You know how it is with art. You can read it so many different ways. But yeah, thank you, KPFT, for the opportunity to share this music. And I do enjoy sharing it via the live stream as we can. Because I know a lot of people are discovering it. So we would love it if you continue to send us your music, send links to Freethinker Radio, and, continue to tune in when you know your bands you love are going to be played. So, yeah, I want to thank KPFT for the opportunity to share the music that we love and to discover the music such as the music Johnny shared earlier. So that means a lot to this show, and it always has. So if you enjoy these bands, please share them.
All right. One of the great things about KPFT is that they do not censor us, Micah. We get to talk about whatever we want. I mean, and over the last year that we've been on KPFT, the last year with Johnny, we've covered Jeffrey Epstein, we've covered the Tuttle story, we've covered so many things that you don't hear about on other Houston radio and really on most terrestrial radio, and even now on some places online, as censorship is ramping up during the COVID-19 pandemic. The most recent example, some of you might have heard that the researcher, some people call him a professional conspiracy theorist, David Icke, his channels were deleted off YouTube and Facebook. And, normally that sort of thing wouldn't make headline news, but the reason being that he had 900,000 subscribers, nearly 1 million people following his work on YouTube, and another close to 1 million, I believe, on Facebook. And, this is just the latest in a long string of things like this. We've been covering this for years, since the purge, the independent alternative media purge, happened here in the US and elsewhere, when a bunch of websites, 500 pages, were deleted off Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter in October 2018. People like Alex Jones, controversial people, have been deleted. And some of you hearing this might think that that's a good idea, and these kinds of people should be taken offline. I mean, just so we're being transparent, David Icke is the one you may have heard of who has talked about and believes that the world is run by some sort of reptilian aliens, as crazy as that might sound to some of you. And we're not taking an opinion on that one way or the other, but that's some of the things he's talked about.
We're trying to
other
defend
things.
Your right to hear.
Exactly. Like, if
hear about the reptilian aliens.
So the interesting thing, though, I want to tell you guys about this before we kind of talk about the bigger picture, is this. Micah, have you ever heard of the Center for Countering Digital Hate? It's a UK-based think tank. You ever heard of that?
Not till now.
Yeah. So
only on Freethinker Radio.
Their chief executive, Imran Ahmed, said, "We commend YouTube on bowing to pressure and taking action on David Icke's channel. Some of his videos had recently been viewed 30 million times. He went on another popular channel called London Real a couple of weeks ago, and the video was going viral, about 10 million views, and then YouTube took it down, and there was about hundreds of thousands of people watching this live stream with him. It's been kind of an ongoing thing. But of course, the focus is not really David Icke. Whatever your opinions on him, the point is that we are seeing calls for and support of censorship here in the U.S. that go against some really basic principles. Even Rolling Stone, Matt Taibbi, he wrote this piece called "The Inevitable Coronavirus Censorship Crisis is Here. As the COVID-19 crisis progresses, censorship programs advance amid calls for China-style control of the internet." This is just published in Rolling Stone. And he talks about how the Atlantic magazine, which I think is sometimes a pretty good website and a magazine for information, don't always agree with them, but they ran an in-depth article of the problems free speech poses to American society in the coronavirus era. Their headline was, "Internet speech will never go back to normal. In the debate over freedom versus control of the global network, China was largely correct and the U.S. was wrong." And this is coming from two law professors from Harvard and University of Arizona, Jack Goldsmith and Andrew Keen Woods. They argued that the American and Chinese approaches to monitoring the internet were already not that dissimilar. They said, quote, "Constitutional and cultural differences mean that the private sector rather than the federal and state governments currently takes the lead in these practices, but the trend toward greater surveillance and speech control here and towards the growing involvement of government is undeniable and likely inexorable." And they go on to give different reasons that this path to censorship, that we need a Chinese-style system of speech control and that it might not be such a bad thing. In fact, they basically argue that the benefit of coronavirus was that it was waking us up to how, quote, "technical wizardry, data centralization, and private-public collaboration can do enormous public good." And I won't read the whole article here, but yeah, that's just an example from Rolling Stone. We also have journalist Caitlin Johnstone wrote a really great piece called "Why You Should Oppose the Censorship of David Icke." Hint, it has nothing to do with David Icke. And I just want to read one quote from here, what she said. which I think makes some good points that are things that we've said here on the show that are important to acknowledge, that even if you don't agree with a person, just like Johnny was saying, that we should fight to defend each other's free speech. Now, one point she makes here that I think is just important in the conversation is some people will say, well, these are private companies. Other people say, yeah, this is an example of why private companies need to be under the control of the government. I'm not going to get into that. But the point that Caitlin Johnstone makes here is that some people will say, well, these are private companies and they're just acting under their own, will. But we got to remember that in May 2018, Facebook partnered with the Atlantic Council, which is funded by NATO, funded by the U.S. Army, the U.S. Navy, and other branches of the U.S. government. I mean, so they're already partnered in various indirect and some more direct ways. Caitlin writes, Facebook's Mark Zuckerberg has called on government to take a, quote, more active role in regulating harmful content and has been actively collaborating with government agencies and government-funded think tanks to decide what content to remove. Social media executives are now routinely called before government hearings and lectured about the need to increase censorship under the implicit threat of antitrust cases being brought. So it goes on to just illustrate the relationship between these institutions. And just the final point here is that I really think is important. A truly free being does not need an alliance of plutocrats and government agencies to protect their mind from David Icke or anyone else. A truly free being doesn't want an alliance of plutocrats and government agencies to exert any control whatsoever over what ideas they are permitted to share and what thoughts they are permitted to think. A truly free being opposes with all their might any attempt to lock in a paradigm where human communication and thereby human thought is controlled by vast, unaccountable power structures which benefit from the absence of dissent. So again, we're trying to call attention to some really big picture ideas here, I think, about what's going on in the world and what we're faced with. Guys, what do you think about this whole thing? I mean, obviously we've talked about censorship for a while and it's not going anywhere.
I thought her ending was like the perfect way to put that, because freedom of speech really is about being able to think. This week I was maybe posting certain things on YouTube and people were sending me articles and I was wrong in some senses, but I was allowed to be wrong and allowed to learn from that. So if we can't see both sides of the discussion, then how can we make educated decisions for ourselves? And also, who is the one deciding, what information is considered valid or not? Do you want that in your own personal hands or in someone else's hands? And I think that's part of what it comes down to in a big picture.
What I'd add to that is, given that first story from the Atlantic, their conclusions or their assumptions about the betterment or the quality of one regime over another. I kind of question, I just have one question. I wonder that if they could publish in China such a article about the Chinese regime being substandard to the American regime, if that would even be allowed to be published in an environment of the type that they're asking for. You see what I'm saying here? They're asking for an environment of increased control and the ability to lock down thought, consent, dissent, everything. And in such an environment, can a contrary view like the one they're putting forward, that the other regime is better, can such a postulate even be proposed in the media there?
Yeah, I would think not, and that's a really good point to make, Micah, to bring that into discussion for them to really consider. For whatever reason, those journalists or those professors are calling for that. I mean, I guess it's up for debate to some degree whether or not what China's doing is better than the U.S. But I think generally we can see, and what the article from Matt Taibbi at Rolling Stone is calling attention to, is that these push towards this direction are more against. They're increasingly against American values, however you want to define that, but that's just to say the Constitution or just basic American rights that people expect that they have. Now, it's been a long time since those rights have been violated and trampled on, but people still believe they have them.
And you also got to look like way down the line and say, what is this going to look like, 10 years from now? Like, who is going to be deciding this 10 years from now? Who's going to be, it's not going to be Trump. It could be someone else. It's not going to be, Mark Zuckerberg after a while. It's not going to be the heads of YouTube. And maybe some of these censor people, some of the people doing the watching of the videos are just, early 20s. So what are the colleges teaching these people? Like, what are their political views aligned with? So there's been a lot of mistakes just based off the sheer volume of videos these people are having to watch.
Yeah, I just want to throw a couple other examples of censorship out there, Micah, and that's before we move on. I know you got some economic stories you want to cover, and we got some important stuff to talk about with food. I mean, this is kind of an ongoing situation. But the other thing, I think we might have lost Johnny for a second. The other thing is we're talking about David Icke, right? Or I get some controversial person that some people might not like. But again, as I said earlier, it's not about him, because we've covered that vitamin C stories are getting taken down off YouTube. The CEOs of YouTube, who again are not just some private company with no connection to the U.S. government via Google and the CIA's venture firm In-Q-Tel. There's connections there. They're not as private as some would like to portray it. Those companies are, they're working. I lost my damn train of thought. Where were we at?
Those companies are working in a way to regulate thought. It is about controlling thought, and by limiting opinion and limiting data and eliminating, let's say all they're eliminating, let's just assume the best of all possible worlds, that they are only eliminating falsehoods. Well, after a while, it's like your immune system. If you never see a falsehood or a fallacious argument, how are you going to argue against them? How are you going to recognize that this opinion is hogwash, or whatever you want to call it? I mean, I don't know. I feel like they're treating us all like a bunch of kids instead of free individuals. Like they want to control what we can see. I mean, and you could say they. Well, it's just called they because in this instance, it's Mark Zuckerberg or whoever. It's these alliances. You could say it's the CFR. You could say it's all these things leaking out. Whatever. It's these mindsets that this is okay. And I think it is. That's why that whole fear thing is so important.
And sometimes they are us, because like we were saying earlier, with the self-reporting and getting people to sort of turn on each other, they don't even have to do, they being the state, Facebook, et cetera, the thought police, whatever. The people are doing it to themselves. And I guess the final point I was trying to make on that a moment ago is that these companies, YouTube, et cetera, they've already said things that go against the World Health Organization's guidelines, which has already flip-flopped their thoughts and answers several times, and originally told people this couldn't be transferred by human transmission. But anything that goes against what they say will be removed from YouTube. So as I mentioned last week, I interviewed Dr. Richard Chang. We even played some of this clip for those of you who listened on the radio. You guys may have heard this on the radio. Dr. Richard Chang, who's been doing intravenous vitamin C treatments for COVID-19 patients. And those videos were taken down off YouTube after 2 days that they take them down, right? We had FBI raiding clinics in Michigan for giving out intravenous vitamin C. I mean, it's a crazy time. So that's why we're really calling attention to it. I'll shut up now, Mike. I know we got a lot of economics and food to get into.
Yeah, but you were bringing up something really important and dear, I think, to the KPFT spirit. I mean, here at KPFT, we have the opportunity to speak about what we want. We have the opportunity to speak about all these news articles, to speak about what's being taken down. Because think about it, once it's taken down, people don't know it exists. To just be able to speak about it on networks such as Pacifica and KPFT, normally we just talk about KPFT because we love them so much. But there's other places, and I know that Freethinker Radio is carried on some of these places, Derrick, and I'd like to just shout out some of these. Why don't you just take a moment while it's in the dialogue to do that?
You mean other sources of independent news, like websites or channels, or
like DLive and places besides YouTube where you can go find originally sourced news material that like these doctors who were taken down?
Yeah, there's definitely, because of the censorship and all the things that we've been talking about just now, there's more of a push for other platforms. And so some of them are being created, some of them already exist. One that's been really growing recently is called Flote, FLOTE.app. It's the website, and they might actually have an app, but it's called Flote, FLOTE. This is not an endorsement, just telling you guys about some options out there. It has a combination of the things you see on Facebook and YouTube. You can upload videos, you can do posts, you can subscribe to people and pay them internally through current cryptocurrency or sign up for dollar payments and support people that way. That's Flote. There's also minds.com, MINDS, just another decentralized social network. BitChute is an alternative video platform where you can find different videos, especially the videos that often are taken down off YouTube. You'll find them on BitChute. Another one is called Library, LBRY.TV. And same thing. And these each have their own ecosystems like Facebook, where you can find travel vlogs and recipes, and you can find news research and podcasts. And lots of people are hosting their content there, from mainstream people like John Stossel to other kind of more just YouTubers or people, gamers that use D Live is another alternative. But the point is that there's options out there. We don't have to be just like with KPFT. You don't have to listen to the mainstream on the FM dial. You don't have to listen and pay attention to only the mainstream social networks on the internet, which would be Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and realize that if you are depending on those platforms and Google search engine, for example, you're not getting the full picture of what's on the internet. I mean, increasingly, you're getting a very narrow view. And I guess that's kind of what we're talking about. Yeah, filtered view. And if for the people who want a Chinese style system, that's what they have. They have, Google built for the Chinese government a search engine that is censored, that doesn't show their people everything. It's called the Great Firewall of China because they have that censorship set up. So I really hope people rethink that. But Michael, let's dive into this economic stuff. I know we got quite a few things to cover on that front.
Well, I think I basically have a lot of bullet points. I mean, we could pull up different things, but one thing I saw out there was Survey Monkey. We see all the stimulus, and we were talking about this since August. So I'm just going to wax a moment here. So we were talking about this in August, September, the quiet bailouts that were occurring, the stimulus, the printing that was occurring. And now we saw with the CARES Act and also this other little act to basically give grants to small businesses, just as we may suspect, the biggest looters are taking the welfare off the top there, the big corporations and banks to buy up and prop the stock market. But it turns out, according to a survey by Survey Monkey, 13% of 42% of small businesses that applied have been approved for the payday protection program. Think about that. Only 13% they're showing of 42% that applied. So they're saying not even all small businesses applied, and now the ones that did, 13%. And we've talked in the past episode, I believe, Derrick, where they had all that money that was meant for small businesses being taken up by publicly traded corporations. And then in the grant one that gave $10,000 emergency funding to small businesses that were hit hard by it, only 3% of the businesses small businesses were able to get that. So I think that's kind of important when we think that the Treasury is saying at this point that by June they want to take another $3 trillion in debt. That's beyond what they did in February. This is the biggest money printing op ever. And, think about this seriously, Derrick. I know you know about Occupy Wall Street and the Tea Party and all that erupted because of 2008. And, at that time, all it was the economic crisis. This is a bigger economic crisis than that. And it's been going on pre-COVID. So I think that's something to think about. And everybody's under house arrest or whatever you want to say. Can't really occupy Wall Street when you have to stick away. You can't really occupy Wall Street when nobody's going to work there. So I don't think we should abandon this economic idea because honestly, for us to have this microphone, for KPFT to be able to broadcast, it takes money. It takes stored value for us to trade for things like electricity. And in such case, this is going to take us to food quickly, but in such case, all of a sudden, valuable things become valuable. And what are they doing? Printing. So, everybody's got the corporations and the banksters and all of them are getting their trillions right off the top. And nobody seems to care as the inflation hits, in a year or so. We're going to see just insane inflation, I believe. So anyway, that's going on. And what if when they reopen, what if this is worse than we believe? I like to believe it's not bad. I don't wear a mask. I don't live in fear and that sort of thing. At the same time, I don't want to be a fool, right? So what if it's worse, or what if there's a false flag or something after they release and they say, see, we got to shut down and print more.
Well,
or whatever.
Micah, to that, just a couple things on what you said there. I mean, you're right. Like I remember 2010, 2011, 2012, and there was almost a kind of brief alliance of what you could call progressives and libertarians or Tea Party types who understood that Wall Street, the 1%, or the banksters, whichever way you wanted to say it, the Federal Reserve, that the problems were associated with them, and people were rallying together for a brief period of time and coming, together in different ways. And in 10 years, people have been worn down. I mean, think about how quickly the media has changed. When I see news reports from 1979, 1970s, and I see the truth that, wow, this was on national TV, this was in mainstream TV, this would never air today, and I think in a lot of ways, the media has been worn down, the media has been controlled, and the people have been distracted, the people have been worn down. And like you said, also, it's just not very easy to organize if you're being locked down in quarantine to try to organize anything, but online, it doesn't appear that there are very, very many people that recognize how big these quote unquote stimuluses have been. They've just been bigger bailouts and continuing the same trend. So I think that's
which
really
make them believe they can do more. They're not going to stop. I don't believe they're going to stop after this June stuff. I mean, we'll see how the quarterly reports come in and stuff. But from the looks of it, all they've been doing is buying more stock. The same thing they did with QE. So we have companies that where their stock is super high priced, and we've got everybody taking $1,200 to lose a month of their life and have their currency watered down. I don't think it's the end. I'm sorry, it gets me riled up because it affects all of us.
We're getting down to the last couple minutes here. We do have, of course, as always, more stories than we can cover. And guys, beginning on next week's show, we are going to be doing our usual Friday 1 hour that you will hear on 90.1 KPFT Houston on Fridays at 3 p.m. But we're also going to be doing a second hour for those who watch or listen online. So whether you catch it live or not, when you hear it on Friday, you can go to thehoustonfreethinkers.com and you'll be able to see the full 2 hour episode and get to see the music videos and the articles and everything that we're covering. Because there's just too much to cover in 1 hour. We're thankful for our 1 hour on KPFT, but we're always ready for more whenever the opportunity comes. So just one note here that Micah was kind of touching on. We covered this last week with the United Nations discussing global health food security. We also got this organization, Global Open Data for Agriculture and Nutrition, their chief scientist discussing how the COVID-19 pandemic is threatening to impact global agricultural output and food security. And this is just an ongoing problem. Grow your own food as much as possible. Get connected to community gardens when you can. Call them up. Maybe they still will take volunteers, even if you have to social distance. If not, maybe you can arrange some system where you can still help them, or you can still get fresh, good food and potentially even seeds from that food. Because as we said a couple weeks ago, Johnny came out with the wisdom to let you know there are seeds in veggies and fruits, and you can save them.
Or you could just be a solo gardener and grow something yourself. They say over 40 million people are unemployed now. I mean, the biggest amount of unemployment since the Depression.
Now's the time.
Grow some veggies.
Yeah. Another one that we just don't have the time for at the moment. We will cover this. Maybe we'll do another additional report next week on just updates on this. But there's this developing situation in Venezuela, a potential coup plot where 2 American, what are being described as mercenaries, were caught in Venezuela and are now being held by the government there. And next week, we'll also cover some developments showing how the coronavirus is giving a boost to that really weird, scary, creepy agency we've told you about over the years, DARPA, where they create all the weird robotics and Jaguar drones and all the crazy kind of things. And coincidentally, some of their projects are getting boosted, getting funded because of the apparent fight against coronavirus. So lots of developing things, but we're going to have to leave it there for now, guys. Anything else you want to say before we wrap up?
Yeah, go outside and be free.
Try to have fun in the face of this. I've heard a lot of people say it looks like they have a real problem with people having fun while the world is falling apart. Maybe their bankster, criminal, authoritarian world's falling apart. Maybe ours isn't. Let's just be wise, take care of ourselves, and have fun.
Yeah, let's use this all as an opportunity to live better lives, get healthier, get smarter, get stronger. Till next week, guys, we'll be back. This is Freethinker Radio. We're going to go out with some Krayze music, enjoy his vibes. Peace.
Peace.